I'm slightly taller, but still not very tall. Yeah, I'm Michael. You don't have to pronounce my surname, no one can. I'm a South African, but I'm also a Belgian and I travel the world, so it's kind of weird. You can just call me Mike. Yeah, my career is, I've always lived to be a game designer. Sorry, I'm a little bit ill today. I've been taking a lot of stuff so my nose doesn't run while I'm doing this talk. I always wanted to be a game designer, and it's taken me through kind of everywhere from programming to art to finally game design professionally at Ubisoft in Germany. So I've always had kind of a path that I wanted to follow, and I obviously didn't really know how to get there because I'm not a very good artist. I make my own games, so I guess I'm a programmer. But primarily I'm a designer, which has also led me to teach game design, which I've been doing for 2 years. Also up in Auckland with Lucy, overseeing production of my students, and also getting involved with the community. Hence Lucy's last slide. I take a lot of my inspiration from her. Apart from that, I run a game design consultancy, so come speak to me afterwards if you have any questions. All right, my tips for what I've learned, and also this is totally a very stock PowerPoint theme. I'm very sorry. As I said, I'm not an artist. The very important thing that I've learned being game designer and the way I approach game design is I very much don't like just sitting in a room thinking about an idea just on my own. I very much like to speak to people and bounce off ideas with these people and have them ask me questions why I'm doing something. Asking yourself why could have been this first point, but I'm pretty sure someone else might talk about that. Find someone who you can speak to. It can be anyone. Probably your mom's going to probably be really nice about your idea and not going to tell you that it's actually not very good. So find someone who can tell you that it's not very good. And instead of just canning it from the get-go, find out how can I make this an awesome design, right? And go back and forth and never be just satisfied with that final thing that you've come up with on your own. A great example, I was going to put in as many anecdotes as I could today, was while working at Ubisoft Blue Byte in Germany. The final project I was working on is called Champions of Ontario, which released a couple of months ago. I was a game designer and I was mainly responsible for everyone's work coming together with me because of my background in all the different areas. And while I was designing, we had about 130 enemies throughout our game, and I'd realized that even though we had a bunch of different gameplay throughout the game, I didn't have mid-game swarm enemies, or at least players would just run over them. So I was thinking, okay, what can I do in this fantasy world? So I spoke to one of my artists and said, hey, I want to make a swarm enemy race and use them in a certain way. I'm not entirely sure how, but it should be kind of a mid-game race. And he said, well, and his name is Thomas Vogel, if you want to look him up. This is some of his concept art. And he said, well, we don't have goblins in our game. And he went off and made me a couple of sketches. And I was like, okay, now I can think about what I can do in this sphere of swarm enemies with a race that is clearly identifiable. And I can think about, but they probably have spears, right? And what do you do with spears? You might throw them. And you go back and forth and ask them and speak to my other colleagues in the game design department on finding out how to make something that's enjoyable for the player. What this also means, especially for indies and a lot of people who are afraid to share their ideas, is your ideas aren't original. I'm not going to hammer on that because I think everyone knows this and has said this. And again, to go back to the anecdote, and I have Pokemon Monopoly up there, my very first memory of designing a game was when I was 8 years old, and I had Pokemon cards and I had Monopoly, and I didn't enjoy either. So I thought, hey, what if I combine them and make this world where you can battle on the board of Monopoly, and a few months later Pokemon Monopoly came out and I thought I was being stalked by someone. My ideas were being stolen. So that was my first experience of finding out that my ideas are actually not original. Of course you can make them original, right? Ideas are just ideas. Working within those and coming up with original solutions is what makes a game design. My second point is just build it. Don't wait too long to learn what you need to know to make something. Right? Prototype things. These shapes are your best friend. Right? It doesn't have to look pretty. You just need to find out, is it going to work? Right? So once you've bounced off these ideas, they might look great on paper. Often they do. And I'm very much into balancing, for instance. And my math on paper looks great, and I put it into the game, and it's just utter garbage. And I have to go back and forth and figure this out. Right? But you cannot do this without prototyping. Don't wait until you have the know-how. Right? Google things. Ask people. The industry is incredibly friendly. Right? Everyone is out there to help you. Just ask them. And of course, when they have time, they will most likely get back to you. If you don't just build it and just sit on those ideas for too long, someone else is going to come up with a game that's basically your game. My anecdote here, so there's a game released in 1991 or something called Wild Wheels, which you can see here, and you might get the idea of what I'm going to say next. And I love this game, and there was never really a sequel. And I was like, one day, when I know how to do that, I'm going to make a sequel to Wild Wheels and make cars and allow you to play soccer with those cars. And then, of course, wasn't their first title, but Rocket League came out and was hugely successful. And I was like, damn, I should have prototyped this with all the time that I had, right? And made it also. Of course, it would have been slightly different, probably better. I don't know. I would try. My third point is that generally going out into the industry, especially if you're going to a AAA company, you're not going to make your own idea, right? And that might suck. My first game at Ubisoft was a browser game, which I was like, whoa, what are browser games at the time? And I've come to love and respect them. Of course, this means you have to work within constraints, right? Within someone else's vision, or within the constraints of your own skill set. I didn't know what picture to put on here, so I asked Lucy, okay, what could I possibly put? I was totally blanked. And she's like, what about like just that picture of a sim burning in a room? That's like a proper constraint, right? And there's so much gameplay there, oh my God. So it's more of a metaphor. Things aren't ever gonna like just set on fire in your face. But working within constraints is actually awesome, right? You can't like set people off. I know most of you have probably done this if you've played The Sims, setting people on fire, whether that's by accident or absolutely not. Working within constraints is awesome because it gives you direction, right? It means you're not just like there on your own, right? Because now and then, and this happens often, you're just going to blank, right? Like when I blank trying to find a picture. Work within these constraints. What will make you love this, because if you're working on AAA title for 3 years or longer, in my case it was close to 3 years, it is going to start getting repetitive. It is going to start getting boring. So you need to spice things up. Now that doesn't mean going against the vision of your lead designer. It's more finding those things that you love in that game, or things that you would love to play within that vision, right? Because games are always made for someone else. Not just for you to play in a cave. I'm sure you can do that, but I'm can assure you it's probably not very financially like a good idea. Your games are always made for someone else or within the vision of someone else. You can love working in games where a situation could be repetitive or the constraints are very, very like compact, right? By putting a little bit of yourself in there. And I was going to put like a very creepy picture of like a chef, and I didn't think it was very appropriate, at least the ones that stock images gave me. Always put a little bit of yourself within your work, within these constraints. Set up constraints for yourself if you don't have a lead designer, if you are the lead designer, right? Because you're making games for someone else to enjoy rather than for yourself. And of course, we all know if we would make a game that we would love to play, it would be awesome working on that, right? Thank you.